two, one.
Now let me hear you say
Hello, my name is Robbie. On here I am Templar Knight. Every person who believes in God but does not attend a church has a story why. But it's said that whenever two or more people gather in God's name, that He is there. So this is church. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Romans 1:16. For I am unashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. We continue our series inspired by music by the 116 Click. And for this week, I picked a song that, well, it kind of caught my attention. Yesterday, the wife and I, we were catering a wedding. It was a smaller wedding, kind of a little affair, but as most weddings do, there's that one little boy who does not know how to behave in a large group. That one little kid that just needs all the attention, is running around, causing a ruckus, and just everyone is trying their best to ignore, but he won't stop. And most weddings have them, and you're just like, kid, where are your parents? But the parents probably don't care all that much, which is why the little kid's being this way. And I was watching this little kid run amok, hoping he wouldn't mess with our catering, mess with the food, because that's our job. We need to make sure this kid doesn't mess nothing up. And at one point I was walking down one of the hallways towards the kitchen, and I see the kid, and he's messing with the gift table. And someone looks at him and they say, "Hey, stop that." And he looks and he says, "No, you're not my dad. You can't stop me." And he takes off running. And I'm just like, oh boy. And I thought about it for a second, because I could stop him. I mean, I could. It would not be hard for me to chase this little kid down and just stop him. But I shouldn't. Because although I'm capable of stopping him, there are a lot of things that are stopping me from stopping him. Like, it's not my job. And if I go and deal with someone else's kid, there's gonna be problems. So the kid was right. We couldn't stop him. And he ran amok the entire evening, and not my problem. And that little kid with his, you can't stop me, it really got me thinking. Because he was right. That little kid knew there was nothing I could do to stop him. He knew that there was nothing the adult he was lipping off to could do to stop him. Maybe go and get his parents. This little boy's sole purpose that entire evening was to cause a ruckus, enjoy himself as much as he possibly could, and do whatever he could to get all the attention he wanted. And for the most part, he succeeded. But again, not my problem. And it kind of got me wondering, what am I doing? See, this little kid, he's all about having fun, causing problems, being a disturbance. What's my goals? What am I up to? Now, not just last night, but in general. What am I trying to do? Okay, 1, I'm trying to serve my Lord. 2, I'm trying to be a good husband. 3, I'm trying to spread God's love to people. I'm trying to teach people about faith and help them grow. I'm trying to be there for people when they need God's love the most. I'm trying to be good at my job and succeed. Make money for myself, make money for my company, give people a product they can be happy with. I started thinking about all my goals and how many I'm succeeding at and how many I'm not. So you got me just kind of analyzing myself. What am I doing? What is stopping me from succeeding? What is holding me back? What is stopping you from succeeding? What's holding you back? Because the one thing I thought about that I'm struggling with the most I realize that it's people that are holding me back. It's toxic friends, toxic coworkers, people that would rather see me fail than see me succeed. I have a coworker that constantly gets under my skin because he wants to be in charge. And so to make himself look better, he puts everyone else down. And sometimes it just really bugs me because, I know I'm good at my job, but I know sometimes I screw up. But the way he just points it out every time just frustrates me. I remember telling him, you know what, bud? Blowing out the candles around you doesn't make yours shine any brighter. Hoping he would realize that he's just him. Breaking down the people that he works with doesn't make him any better at what he's doing. Why doesn't he focus on improving himself? So I've got this weird concept. I would like to build up my team. I would like to support those around me so that they can support me and together we grow. But this dude's just toxic, and he's always trying to hold me back. But I realize that he's only impacting one part of my life. You want to know who holds me back the most? That guy. Right there. Staring at me in the monitor. He is my biggest enemy. Not because he says rude things to me, but because he's the one who tells me I can't the most. Every time I have some wild idea of something great I could do, something interesting, something I could change, he holds me back and he says, but Robbie, you're a creature of habit. You don't like change. You like things just the way they are. Why would you go and try and do things differently? See, he makes up excuses for me. He holds me back. I see him every day in the mirror. And he is constantly trying to stop me. And I can't help but wonder if maybe I'm not alone in this. What if you guys are also being held back? Not by friends, not by coworkers, but by yourself. Am I the only one here who gets in my own head and says, you can't do it, buddy. It's not gonna work. It's a cool idea, but you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You don't words well enough. It's a great opportunity, but you're safe where you're at. You're comfortable where you're at. You're afraid of change. I hope I'm not alone. So I realized my biggest enemy is me. Because if anyone else were to come and try and tell me, Robbie, you can't do that, I'm going to see that as a challenge. Oh, really? You don't think I can? Sit back and watch. But when I tell myself that, I break myself down and I get discouraged. And I give up and I move on and I say, it was just a foolish dream. See, I'm the first one to tell myself that something is impossible, that something is not worth the effort. I do that to myself. But what did God have to say about that? You see, I can tell myself that something is impossible. But in Matthew chapter 19, verse 26, Jesus said, with man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Me, I'm just a man. I can't succeed. I can't thrive. I can't grow. I can't do this on my own. It's impossible for me. But with God, it is possible. Need more than just one verse? Paul wrote to the people of Philippi it was in the book of Philippians 4 verse 13. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Are we seeing a trend here? Interesting story about that. Who knows what was going on in Paul's life when he wrote that? Any ideas? When did Paul write his letter to Philippi? He was in jail. Paul was locked up. Now, funny thing about Paul, see, back before he was called Paul, his name was Saul. He was a Jew, and he was a Christian hunter. It was his job to go out and find these people who were following this man named Jesus and stop them, because these Christians were speaking and they were saying that Jesus was the Son of God. The Jews didn't believe that, and so they were doing everything they could to stop him, doing everything they could to stop this Jesus. And Saul was one of those hunters who was out finding them. And literally one day, God shows up. Saul is riding his horse, and a brilliant light lights up in front of him. So bright it knocks him off his horse down to the ground. And he's laying there and he can't see because it's so bright. And he hears this voice. It's the voice of the Lord, and he says, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And Saul felt God's power. He felt his presence. And he changed his life and turned it around. Instead of being the man who hunted these Christians, he became one of them. He went from tracking them down and trying to preach that saying Jesus was the Son of God was blasphemy, to standing out on the corner and preaching about Jesus and God's love. This dude did a complete 180. He went from being the Christians' enemy number one to being one of their staunchest leaders. And he got arrested for it. He spent 5 years locked up. And when he was arrested, when he was in jail, was when he wrote that letter, was when he wrote the book Philippians. Where in jail, he said, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. This dude couldn't even go for a walk without guards following him around. He couldn't do anything on his own. He was locked up. He didn't have freedom. And yet he wrote that he could do all things. Now, why would he say that? Why would he think... He said that because at that time in his life, he was exactly where God needed him to be. See, God put Paul there. Paul was following God's plan for his life. And that's where God needed him to be. Because Paul wrote a lot of good letters. He wrote a lot of books. Why did he do it? Why did it need to be there? Why did it matter? Why did God do this with God? Why was God's plan for this? Words, buddy, figure it out. Why did God need Paul to write this? God needed Paul to write those words down and send them to the people of Philippi. But not only for them, God needed this to happen because some 2,000 years later, a guy in a purple shirt was going to read what Paul wrote. And it was going to change his life. He was going to read what Paul wrote. And it was going to change someone else's life. It was going to inspire someone. It's going to help someone's faith grow. And that's only one of the many reasons that God needed Paul to write that down. Why God did so much work so that this could happen. So that Paul could sit there in prison and say, I can do anything because God will help me. And if he can say that while in prison, if Paul can write down words that will change the world, what's stopping you?
3, 2, 1. Now let me hear you say,